You're listening to the Effective Statistician podcast, the weekly podcast with Alexander Schacht, myself, and Benjamin Pieske, designed to help you reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients while having a great work-life balance. So today we will talk about how you can use AI, Copilot, for your day-to-day work. And we are diving into this together with Paolo. Paolo is a good friend of mine, and he was one of the first podcast listeners that I actually got to know directly and personally, and who I didn't know before already. So I'm quite excited to have him on the show today and talk with him about a really, really hot topic. If you have not submitted your abstract now, it is too late, sorry. But you can still register for the upcoming conference of the Effective Statistician that is happening in November 2024. There are lots of workshops. I think we are now over 10 workshops that are listed, which you can all get if you go for the premium version of the conference. Yes, there's also a free part, which I can highly recommend because it also covers the keynotes and the pretty cool networking experience. And I think in the workshops there's so much great value in there. Just have a look. There's so many cool things from outstanding presenters. I think each of them would be worth the price of the whole conference. So go for it. You basically get at least 10 times the value if you go for the whole conference in one go. I'm producing this podcast in association with PSI, a community dedicated to leading and promoting the use of statistics within the healthcare industry for the benefit of patients. Join PSI today to further develop your statistical capabilities with access to the ever-growing video-on-demand content library, free registration to all PSI webinars, and much, much more. Head over to the PSI website at psiweb.org to learn more about PSI activities and become a PSI member today. Welcome to a new episode, and today I'm super happy that we have Paolo again. Hi Paolo, how are you doing?
Alexander, I'm doing very well. You?
Very good. It's spring outside, and lot of fresh things are happening. And of course, there's a lot of very, very interesting things happening outside. And I think at the moment you can't actually look into any news, social media, whatsoever, and not step over AI.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely everywhere. And today we want to talk really about how all these tools, and specifically Copilot, can help you at work now and how that could look like in the future. And Paolo, you have now been working with Copilot a little bit and can actually share your experiences, your learnings. But before we get into that, how did you step over Copilot? When did you first learn about that?
I learned about that when I was, scrolling my LinkedIn feed, and I saw a lot of buzz around that. And it seemed, something really cool, at least to try out. Because my first idea was to try out the tool and see maybe, I don't know, how this kind of tools can work for us. Are they really useful? Is the buzz worth? And maybe it was a way to be, part of the conversation, because as you said, it's really impossible to avoid AI, generative AI, large language models, and copilots in any discussions. If you are in a conference, if in a virtual coffee with a colleague, it's something that pops up, all the time. So it was not really because it was something I needed for my daily work because I was stuck and I need another tool, but it was just, for trying out.
Yeah. So an interesting learning is you learn about all these kind of different things if you scroll through the right social media. And I've learned a lot about all kind of different things through LinkedIn. And so I think that stresses once again the importance to leverage that social media network for your advantage. I think it's different from lots of the other social media networks that are nice distractions and kind of entertaining. I think LinkedIn is part of work. And I think checking it, posting on it, being active on it, having a good profile helps you a lot with your job.
Yeah, of course.
So, Copilot, what is that actually?
Yeah, I mean, Copilot, there are different versions of it. I tried GitHub Copilot integrated in RStudio because basically Copilot is an application integrated in another application for simplifying your work. So, for example, GitHub Copilot integrated in RStudio is an application driven by AI models that when given a prompt will output code for you in a variety of languages. Those could be R and Python, for example, if you use it in the RStudio IDE. And it's a bit surprising because often it provides you with a very accurate version of what you're looking for. So, of course, Copilot leverages the code written by other, software developers and researchers. So for the most basic stuff, it's really impressive. If you want to read dataset, perform a linear regression, perform a logistic regression, and maybe summarize the results and put them in a table, it works just fine.
How do these prompts look like? Is it kind of take dataset X, use Y as an endpoint, use these variables X, Y, Z as covariate and create a linear model?
Yes. And you can also, for example, in R, you can have comments as in other languages in your code. And there are different ways of commenting your code. So basically you can start by putting your comment in the code, like a logistic regression with Y as dependent variable and X as covariate. And maybe Y and X comes from a data set that you have already loaded into the software. And then you go to the next line, and then Copilot will do some auto-completion and suggestions of the code. So you can see a line of code suggested, and you can simply push the tab to accept the suggestion, or maybe you can refuse the suggestion, and because maybe it's not accurate, maybe it's not what you're looking for. But again, in general, for also basic stuff, and sometimes I was surprised because let's suppose you're doing some code for manipulating data. And at some point, maybe you have a few lines for manipulating the fields in a categorical variable because you want to fine tune the categories to look at in a better way. And then after the first maybe categories, then it starts to suggest the next category and the next one. And they are always accurate because, of course, it reads the levels of your variable in the data set. Because it is able to use the data set you loaded previous code from other developers, your code, the code you entered before.
Okay.
And of course, for basic stuff. And for example, when I was doing this kind of populations, at some point I created, missing values for some specific categories with the purpose of removing these missing values at the end. And really at the end, he suggested me the na.omit command for removing all the records with missing values in that variable. So
this is interesting. Yeah. So it basically reads the code while you're typing it, compares it to existing other codes and makes suggestions
for you.
When you then do, for example, these like a logistic model and you have entered 2-3 different variables, would it also suggest kind of, you could add interactions or interaction terms or things like that?
No, but maybe you can, thinking aloud, maybe you can add a comment like the same model with interaction. And then you can have the next line, maybe with the suggested model, including the original variables and the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And that could work. Of course, for example, for logistic regression, it provides you with the distribution, the link is equal to the logic link. And of course, there could be other options. I mean, it's a Copilot and it is not statistician, but maybe it's a good starting point for having already something drafted. Maybe then you can dig into the documentation and see other ways of, doing logistic regressions and using other links, for example.
Then the output is often something that we can spend a lot of time on, kind of creating a nice table or a nice figure. What's your experience there?
Yeah, for the figures, for example, I have to invest more time on it, but it is able to create ggplot code, for example, from zero, just with one line of comment. So if you want to have a box plot, scatter plot, stuff like that, you can have it. And I mean, these basic data visualizations are correct. So and also maybe for learning could be important because I don't know, ggplot is really cool, but you have to know it. And maybe you are coming from another language. You're just using R because it's convenient for piece of work you're doing, but maybe you usually create figures with, Python maybe.
Yeah.
But instead of going back to Python for the figures, you can stay in R because you can have basic suggestions from Copilot.
Yeah. How does it work with translating code?
Can also translate code. In general, for this kind of processes, you can also use the Copilot application in the Microsoft Edge, for example, just to name an opera which is integrated in Bing. Mm-hmm. So, for example, even outside an IDE, you can, for example, give it a piece of code in SAS and translate it into R.
This is just so cool. Yeah. You basically have a deep L for software languages, for programming languages, rather than for translated from French to German and from German to English and so on. Yeah.
That's a good software is a language. So
yeah. That's pretty cool. Now, if I step over code, and for example, I look into code from, a homepage, from a friend, from a colleague, from an expert. Yeah. Can Copilot help me understanding this code? What it does?
Yes. And the nice thing about Copilot, also the application integrated in Windows, for example, once I was reviewing code in SAS, And you know that in production, you have someone using some kind of codes, and in QC, you have another programmer using another piece of code, and maybe they're using different parts of the language for doing the same task. And maybe you're not, I don't know, super familiar with do loop because you used maybe other ways working with data steps. I don't know. And you can pick up the code, pass it to Copilot, and ask Copilot for an explanation. How does it work? And you can even try to fix it if it doesn't work. But of course, this is more challenging.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not always accurate. But again, of course, if you are a fantastic programmer in this specific language, so maybe you need it for enhancing your work in a repetitive task. But maybe it's not 100% useful for fixing issues. But if you are a starter, for example, in a language, then maybe you can learn a lot and using a lot in your work.
Yeah, I love this idea of getting started faster. Yeah, so you can create a draft program, and then based on your knowledge, you can fine tune it, improve it step by step over time. And of course, for learners, it's a great opportunity to understand code from others. It's a great opportunity to get faster started. And as you said, kind of, for example, with ggplot, understanding what are actually the things that you need to put in for a box plot or a scatter plot or some other plot. It is much easier to basically let Copilot find these different things than for you to kind of search for them. So I think that there's a lot of things that makes that really, really nice and easy.
Yeah, and speaking of learning, for example, I read a paper on using, for example, GitHub Copilot in R for teaching statistics.
Yeah.
So directly, for example, I mean, it's tricky, but you have a classroom, students for, maybe they are studying business or psychology and they have to learn a bit of statistics. And you can install RStudio, the GitHub Copilot, and start by teaching statistics directly with Copilot without, passing to all the steps, explaining how the syntax work, stuff like that. Because in 1 hour, you're able to have an experience for the students who can interact with the data and have the first results in their hands.
Yeah.
Well, of course, then it's tricky because for some students, it's like Copilot is the programming language and not R and RStudio.
Yeah, I think it's great to get started. It's great to learn a lot with it. And you still can't switch your brain off. You still need to learn about these kind of different things. But I think it can greatly enhance how you do your day-to-day jobs. Of course, there is one thing that you need to notice. When you're working in a big organization, be careful how you use that. There is lots of these things are basically public. So everything you do in there is basically public. So that's why more and more companies get to kind of these large language models that basically sit within their walls. They're so AI security walls, so to say. And if you have access to that, then this is really great. However, for learning, for experimenting, for understanding how all kind of different things work, I think this is a great tool.
Yeah, and we are just at the beginning, and these tools are here to stay. So,
yeah, absolutely. We'll see. Thanks so much, Paolo, for this awesome discussion about Copilot. And stay tuned. We'll have much more about AI and machine learning and these kind of things in the future. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.
You very much enjoyed this discussion with Paolo about the use of AI, here Copilot, and how it can help you in your day-to-day work. Something else that can help you in your day-to-day work will be the Effective Statistician conference in fall 2024. So first half of November. We have lots of workshops where you can interactively learn something to improve your day-to-day experiences as a statistician, data scientist, and programmer. So check out theeffectivestatistician.com and go for the premium version now to get access to all these outstanding workshops. This show was created in association with PSI. Thanks to Rain and the team at VVS who helped with the show in the background, and thank you for listening. Reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients. Just be an effective statistician.